Welcome to America's Heroes Group, this time with a special edition, doing something we haven't done in a while, and that is go on location live. We have with us today someone you might have heard on YouTube if you haven't bought her album already. She's a Stella Award-winning gospel artist, and is Miss Amethyst. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
It's good to be here. Good to see you. We haven't had this conversation in a while, talking about music and talking about the things that really are passionate, that you're passionate about. You have an album coming out.
Yes, it's actually out.
It's out. Okay.
It's out.
No, this is you took something that's going to be really important to you because this has a special meaning. This album.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. So
the album took about a 6-year process to come into fruition, and I started off this journey with my sister. We were singing since the ages of 3 and 4 years old, and I started off as the Moye Singers, and we would sing around the city of Chicago and even multiple states in the United States. And the journey started with her, but the journey did not end with her. I lost my sister a year and a half ago to sarcoma tumor, and between diagnosis and transition it was only 6 months. And so it's very special. I fell apart and I crumbled, but I had to remember my assignment. And I remember some of the last words that my sister imparted. And she said, go full in and go full throttle. Finish your assignment, finish your destiny. She finished hers. And so I had to finish mine. So this album is dedicated to the memory of my sister, Angeline.
Wow. And she was a person that people really appreciated her, not just for her voice, but the fact that she was so full of life.
Oh, yeah.
And she was a life of the party. She was the type of person that would light up a room. And I think that's really amazing that you actually took that time to remember her through song.
Yeah.
I think that's really good. Now, we also have a couple of guests with us from the National Sarcoma Foundation. We have Tasha Nathan, and also we have Brandi Felser. How you guys doing today?
Great. Glad to be here. Yeah.
So what was that? I couldn't hear you.
Thank you for having us.
Tell us, what is sarcoma?
So sarcoma is actually a rare cancer of the connective tissues and of the bone. It only occurs in about 1% of adults and 15 to 20% of children, although it is a leading form of cancer for childhood cancers. Because of its rarity, one thing that's important to know about sarcoma is it can happen anywhere in the body, and it spans all age groups. But one thing that's very unique about sarcoma is late diagnosis is often happens, and it's not uncommon. And people won't find out that they have sarcoma till very late, and diagnosis can take years. And unfortunately, many people are diagnosed at the late stage. And so because it's also a rare cancer, it lacks treatment options and resources and awareness. And it is considered a very lonely and lethal disease.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about, what are some of the people that can develop this type of cancer? What are the characteristics, of any? Are there certain types of demographics that are affected by this?
Not really. It spans all different demographics. And again, it spans all different age groups. The median age is younger, around 40 years old. But I think that's also skewed because we have pediatric involved in that as well. But we do have a very young population of people who are diagnosed with sarcoma. And so, again, it can be anybody, and it can be any age. And depending on the subtype. So one thing about sarcoma that's also very unique is that sarcoma has, according to the World Health Organization, over 100 different histologic subtypes, which means you essentially have sarcoma as the umbrella, but you could have 100 different types of the cancer inside. So, and how you are treated and the demographics are based on the subtype that a person is diagnosed with. And so there is no link necessarily to genetics. There's no link to why people get. There are some risk factors, but there's no real link as to why people get sarcoma.
So one of the things I've noticed too is that in the military, people talk about toxic exposure, and that's been used to link a lot of veterans to certain types of sarcomas as well. Can you tell us about that a little bit, Tasha?
Yeah. So toxic exposure is certainly something that we pay attention to in the sarcoma world. Brandi actually has a lot of experience talking about this, so I'll pass it to her. But there's not necessarily, it's definitely something that is needing a lot more research in terms of the direct subtypes related. I'll let Brandi kind of take it from there.
Yeah, so there is some risk factors involved with sarcoma that include toxic exposure to herbicides and things. There is some information that there could be a connection to certain soft tissue sarcomas due to Agent Orange. But one thing that's important when you think about the military population is that the demographics of sarcoma, skewing younger, also overlay with a younger population when you think of the military population. So when you think of the risk factors of sarcoma being exposure to radiation, exposure to some toxic chemicals, and also injury. There is a risk factor of injuries that can lead to sarcoma. So there is some risk factors that actually overlay with the military population, even outside of just exposure to toxic chemicals. But they haven't made a direct connection. I'm not, from a sarcoma standpoint, I think there's still research lacking and the toxic chemical exposure. I know they have, it doesn't include bone or Kaposi sarcoma, which actually has a connection to HIV and AIDS. They have made that connection. But because soft tissue sarcoma is so broad and lacks a lot of research, I think they haven't been able to be very specific, but there are some research has been done to show that there is a connection to toxic chemicals. But again, more importantly, radiation, injury, and a lower age group for a population really overlays with the military population.
So one of the things that I think about a lot when I think about military veterans is the PACT Act. So the PACT Act was passed recently. And what that did was it opened up a lot of research for people to get more information about these types of cancers. But if you don't have a military background, if you don't have that type of insurance, because people can go to the VA, right? Go to VA and get treatment. How hard is it to get treatment for these types of sarcomas if you're in the civilian population?
That's a great question. It is very difficult. And there's a couple of reasons for that. And this is also something that makes sarcoma very unique and really shines a light on why we need so much more awareness and why we need so much more investment in research. Because we know, and statistically we can prove this, that patients have better outcomes when they are treated at a sarcoma specialty center. The issue is that there are not very many sarcoma specialty centers across the United States. So we have large parts of the country that do not have sarcoma centers. Also, within states, you may have only one sarcoma center, and that means people have to travel. So whether you're traveling within the state, whether you're having to fly, we have many patients that will fly or uproot their family to be able to go get treatment at a sarcoma center. And what happens is, if a patient is sick, they have an issue, they feel a lump, they have pain, for whatever reason they make it to their local doctor, they may make it to a local community oncologist who's probably never seen a sarcoma patient in their career. Wow. And so they don't have necessarily the knowledge to treat a sarcoma patient. And so when you think about socioeconomic factors, not everybody can travel for treatment, even if it's an hour away, even if it's 30 minutes away. It makes it very, very difficult to have access to treatment for sarcoma, which it's not like that for other cancers. And so it creates a unique challenge and a larger burden for sarcoma patients to be able to access treatment.
So Amethyst, when your sister was going through this, how hard was it for you to really kind of first get the diagnosis and then get treatment?
Well, thankfully, it wasn't too difficult for us to receive the diagnosis. We live in the city of Chicago, and most of the clinicians and facilities here are very much exposed to a lot of different rare comorbidities and disease states that perhaps other places are not. So once she actually got the testing, we received the diagnosis probably within 3 to 4 weeks of her last testing. But unfortunately, even with them being able to diagnose that quickly, at the time of diagnosis, she was already late stage 3. Wow. Early stage 4. And we went and she got opinions of at least 3 of the top facilities in the Chicagoland area. And their goals of treatment and their plans of treatment were pretty much synonymous. So we knew they were kind of spot on, but the cancer is so rare and aggressive, none of the treatment plans were responsive in her situation.
And how hard was that for your family and everybody going through that? Because when one person gets sick, it's not just that person, it's really the whole family and the experience that all of it, everybody kind of endures. How did you stay strong?
Our faith in God, like literally our faith in God is the only thing that got us through. She was sick. We were all sick. We all were sick to our stomach. Our last resort, probably about 4 weeks before she died, we literally drove her to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota as a last, sense of hope. And they pretty much told us it was too late. And she came home. She passed away maybe 3 weeks later. But the treatment plans that she went through, they did not respond to the chemotherapy. And then she decided she wanted to do a holistic plan. We did it with her. Everybody in the house was trying to change their body to a more alkaline state. Her dietary restrictions, we adopted them with her. We wanted her to feel love. We wanted her to feel support. And we wanted her to feel that we were going through this together. We are a family unit. When one hurts, we all hurt. When one is in pain, we all in pain. Like she was crying and screaming, and I'm crying and screaming because I can't stand to see her in that much pain. But she was such a trooper. There were many times for many, many weeks, she resisted the urge to put anything that wasn't natural or 100% organic in her body. She resisted the urge to take any type of medical prescribed pain medicines. And for those who can't even think to kind of understand the top of pain of stage 4 cancer, I mean, there's no words to compare. You literally just would hear the travail in her voice from being in pain. And even that, the pain pills really didn't help. They helped subside her body. They helped her to relax. And most times she would be sleeping. But when she woke back up, the pain would still be there.
So, Brandi, what can we do as just everyday people to try to protect ourselves against these types of illnesses? Is there anything that we should be doing as a society?
I think, especially when it relates to sarcoma, because we don't have any real known connections, one of the things that we always tell people is kind of like with everything else, a healthy diet, anything you would do for another disease, a healthy diet, good nutrition, exercise, limited intake of alcohol, those types of things, to just keep your body as healthy as you can. And, it's not, again, sarcoma is not like other cancers, and that, there may be some direct connection. But one thing I also wanted to mention, Amethyst, to your point of the treatment, is one challenge that we have is that there are very few FDA approved treatments for sarcoma. So many patients either end up on clinical trials, kind of at that, I'll travel for the clinical trial because that becomes patient or your treatment, or the only hope that you possibly have. But many patients are treated with either a chemotherapy that was developed 30 plus years ago, or something that is not even indicated in particular for that subtype or that sarcoma disease. So it makes it even more challenging when you are diagnosed and trying to go through the journey of what are my options, even what are the options that we have, but also, as you said, to travel to the Mayo Clinic to see if there's another option and to see if even there's a clinical trial out there that can help. And that is something as a society, and why we appreciate so much, Amethyst, of what you're doing to raise awareness about sarcoma, because the more awareness that we raise, the more we speak out about the unique needs of people diagnosed and living with sarcoma, the more research funding we can get, the more movement we can make in terms of getting treatments to patients. We hear all the time how lonely of a disease, and as you said, a lethal disease. It's aggressive and it's lethal. And the more we can do to raise awareness, the more we can move the needle for people diagnosed with sarcoma. And it's so important to do. So I just want to say thank you so much for what you're doing, because it does make a difference. And as a society, we can do more.
Absolutely.
Now, Tasha, you have a personal story as well about sarcoma. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually a sarcoma survivor. I was diagnosed in 2022 with rhabdomyosarcoma, so one of the subtypes, one of the many subtypes. Um, and for me, my experience in getting diagnosed is what really stands out the most when I reflect on my journey. It took 2 months from the time I had a symptom to the time they figured out that it was a sarcoma. And I was very fortunate that in that time it hadn't metastasized. Um, but, you know, I live in Boston. I live in a city with abundant medical care. I did have good insurance at the time. I had a supportive family, and I constantly think about these factors that led to me getting a diagnosis that at the time felt like it took forever. But in the world of sarcoma, 2 months is actually pretty short. And I had a lot of resources available to me that led to a diagnosis while it was still in the local stage, which is important when it's a cancer as aggressive as sarcoma. And so for me, that sat with me my entire diagnosis and throughout treatment of my fortune, but opening my eyes to, well, that's not the case for everybody across the country. And what about the people who are in my position? And so that kind of is what led me into this work of, you know, helping spread awareness, create better access, invest in research that is going to help find treatments for people. As a survivor, it's not lost on me that recurrence is possible. And when a sarcoma reoccurs, there's often no clear path on what to do next, which kind of speaks to the lack of treatment available and funding that goes into creating more treatments. But yeah, I've had my personal journey with sarcoma, and you know, grateful to be here and hopeful that in all of the work together, we can help more people be here after a diagnosis with sarcoma.
And I appreciate the work you guys are doing. Amethyst, when you wrote your album, we had the pleasure of hearing it because we had this concert here at the church, at Holy Temple Cathedral. And we raised money actually for the Sarcoma Foundation so they could actually do their work and do the things that they're doing out all around the world. But is there any particular song that's most special to you on this album?
Yes. So that will be a song called Angels. It's actually a cover song, a remake of Richard Smallwood's wonderful symphonic songs. It's very near and dear to my heart. But my sister and I recorded that song about 15 years ago. We never released it. We never did anything with it. And we just kind of left it as it was. And after she passed away, I got with the team of producers and songwriters and said, I need to bring this song to life. I have to have my sister's voice on my debut project. And they worked magic. Them and God, they were shaking their head like, we don't know how we're going to do this, because we did not have the original files. I only had a copy of the song, and the original files were destroyed or lost. And so we really stepped out on prayer and faith, and it was a miracle. So I believe it's track number 8. It's called Angels. And the song 15 years after being recorded is now a reality on my current project, An Amethyst Symphony, Amethyst and Angeline, featuring my sister, called Angels.
So are we going to see a tour?
Great question. Perhaps, maybe sometime in 2025. So the rest of this year, obviously, will be devoted to promoting the project and being able to minister the project, get into the hearts and the minds of the people of God. The people of God are everywhere. So I want to travel the world. And so right now we're in the beginning planning stages of a tour, but we hope to be on the road in some major cities real soon.
Wow. Well, I appreciate y'all guys' time. You guys really give us a lot of information about sarcoma and also the awareness. I think if anything we should know about this is that we need to get the word out and get more support around this disease, and maybe get some of our politicians to take a little more serious and a little more, maybe some devoted time and effort and money to try and get more awareness and get better treatments and things along those lines. That's kind of alarming to me that you mentioned, Brandi, that there's sometimes where you don't really, it's experimental, almost like the types of treatments that are out there. They're not really, there's really no course of action that people can actually just point to as a solution.
Yeah, that's very true. And it's very unfortunate, but it is very true. And, you know, there's a lot of research that's being done. I will say there's a little bit more investment in sarcoma research than in the past, but certainly there needs to be more.
So anything like to add, Tasha, to this, to your story as well?
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, I'm one of the people who received treatments that have been around for 30 to 40 years. And, you know, my type of sarcoma in particular greatly impacts the pediatric population. So I'm constantly thinking about, you know, how my body as an adult responded to those treatments, and that our children go through that. And I just think for everybody, no matter your age, sarcoma patients deserve more than treatments that haven't advanced in 30 to 40 years. So the work that you're doing to bring awareness and, you know, hopefully more investment in treatment options and more survivors is really important. So we thank you for that.
My pleasure. But I'd be remiss not to ask you this one question about, you guys do a marathon every year with the Marine Corps. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so we're a charity partner for the Marine Corps Marathon, and we do Race to Cure Sarcoma series all across the country, which we have one in Chicago coming up. And you know, they're really the only place that really brings the sarcoma community together. And it's a place for people to honor their loved ones and for survivors to celebrate. And they're just truly an amazing experience. So we wanted to take that experience and bring that to the marathon level because we have some avid runners. So we partner with the Marine Corps Marathon, and we have a Race to Cure Sarcoma marathon team. And I will tell you, last year I trained for the Marine Corps Marathon. I never ran a marathon in my life. So anybody can do it. Although the Marine Corps Marathon is a little different than most, because if you don't know, they have these things called gauntlets, where others you have to qualify by time. In the Marine Corps Marathon, you have to meet times throughout. You know, it is the Marines, so they have ways to challenge us. But, you know, we have a Race to Cure Sarcoma team, and we really started it to help raise more awareness about sarcoma, and also it raises funds for sarcoma research. So it's a great thing to be a part of, and you know, and the Marines are always great to be a part of. My father was a Marine, and my uncle was a Marine. So, you know, it's something very close to my heart as well.
So how hard is it to partner with the Sarcoma Foundation? Do you guys have a lot of outreach and things that you do in order to pull people into your organization?
Yeah, so Sarcoma Foundation of America is the largest patient advocacy and research funding group in the sarcoma community. So we are the largest private funder of research, and we also fund research in 12 countries outside of the United States. So really trying to move the needle. We also do public policy advocacy on Capitol Hill. We host an advocacy day every year. As you mentioned, getting our legislators involved and understanding the unique needs that sarcoma patients face. We also provide education to patients, community oncologists. So there's a lot of ways to get involved with the Sarcoma Foundation of America. But we are out there, and we are working very hard to improve outcomes. I mean, we were started 25 years ago by a husband and wife whose 2-year-old son was diagnosed with sarcoma. And we had a mission to change the landscape. And we have. Again, there's more work to do. There always is. But certainly we welcome anyone who wants to get involved and help us, you know, help families. And again, Amethyst, as you said, it is a family. It affects the entire family. You have a person going through it, but it affects everybody who is going through it as a whole family and the community of supporters. So we welcome anyone who wants to be involved and help us to raise awareness and change outcomes.
And donate, audience. Go out there, make sure you go to the website, check out their web pages, and get involved and sponsor and buy this album. This is a great album.
Absolutely.
Buy that album. Well, I appreciate everybody's time, and I appreciate all the information you guys have given us and give us a lot to think about, and also something to be hopeful for, because maybe we can do something about this and get some more effort, and from our legislators, and also from this making people more aware of this type of crisis, because it is a crisis.
Oh, it absolutely is.
This is Sean Claiborne with America's Heroes Group. Stay tuned next week. We'll be back again, but make sure you also like and subscribe, and also make sure that you look at all our old shows on our YouTube channel, and also americashg.org. We'll be back in a little bit.